muscular, red-haired man in a bubble bath calls the pink-haired baby on his lap Elizabeth, but she just babbles back. Her thoughts reveal that in this new life, she can even earn rewards. She explains that she cherishes this life because she remembers her last one, flashing back to a blue-haired woman sinking into dark water. In her first moments of this new life, she was a crying newborn with blue-green hair. She recalls that in her past life, before being summoned here, her name was Liz. In that life, the blue-haired Liz studied diligently in the kingdom of Eltode, always dreaming of having a family of her own. The kingdom was ruled by the infamous Tyrant family, known for their fiery red hair. The family patriarch, Michael, was known as the War Demon, a man who crushed his enemies without mercy. His wife, Adelina, was a powerful femme fatale who bent the laws to her will, but also created a system to recruit talented commoners. Reading their history, Liz hoped she could avoid their tragic and ruinous fate. At only 15, she began working at the Royal Palace's Government Affairs Office. Her first day was chaotic, with colleagues celebrating by throwing papers in the air as she walked in. She quickly learned that, as a commoner, she was treated unfairly, with others mocking the idea of helping the poor. The harassment was relentless, with her colleagues even dumping their disgusting leftovers on her head. Despite a nobleman cruelly taunting her with food, she endured all the humiliation in silence. However, she found a powerful ally in the first queen, Claudia Eltode, who saw her unique value and believed she could change things. The queen's kindness was a beacon of hope as she gently wiped away Liz's tears. Her hard work paid off when she was entrusted with managing the kingdom's greatest treasure, the magic crystal. But as an unknown hand reached for the door to the crystal's chamber, a dark energy began to crackle. Suddenly, a terrifying incident unfolded as a young blonde girl with glowing eyes brandished a dagger, and Liz could only watch in shock. The blonde girl immediately pointed at Liz, framing her by screaming that a thief was trying to steal the magic crystal. The girl runs to her mother, the queen, who immediately turns on Liz. Despite Liz's pleas, the queen coldly regrets ever appointing a commoner. Stunned into silence, Liz is surrounded by royal guards with swords drawn, her world crashing down. The queen praises her daughter for exposing the thief, condemning the commoner who dared to threaten a precious resource. "Execute her," the queen commands. And as the guards close in, Liz realizes her low birth sealed her fate. With blades at her throat, she can't process the betrayal from the very queen she had admired so much. She's brought before a guillotine as a massive crowd chants for her death. Watching from afar, two noble women sneer that a commoner's hard work will never be rewarded. Facing her doom, Liz accepts that she was powerless to break the cruel cycle of their society. Whack! The crowd adds a final insult, pelting her with garbage as she awaits her end. She sees the cold, hard reality in the faces of the crowd and the royals. Some are just born to rule, and others to suffer. Looking to the heavens with bloody tears, her final thought is of the family she never had. As the blade falls, she makes one last desperate plea to any god who might be listening. Her spirit is suddenly drawn into the massive purple magic crystal, her prayer seemingly answered. She awakens to a strange, new reality where her senses are fuzzy and her body feels incredibly heavy. Looking at her own hands, she's shocked to see they are tiny and chubby, the hands of a baby. She's been reborn, now lying in a lavish golden crib in a ridiculously fancy room. Realizing she's now an adorable pink-haired baby, she's utterly stunned but also a little excited. A second chance at life. And as a cute baby no less, she can't help but giggle with glee. Her good mood vanishes when she spots a family portrait on the wall and recognizes the man's red hair. The blood-soaked image of Michael, the battlefield demon, flashes in her mind. It can't be. Wah! The baby lets out a horrified scream, realizing she's been reincarnated into the very Tyrant family she hated. The painful memory of her public execution floods back, the crowd's hateful cheers still echoing. Her babyish joy is gone, replaced by a grim and serious determination. She observes her opulent surroundings, realizing the life of a noble is on a completely different level. Alone in her grand nursery, she begins to process her strange and terrifying new situation. Peeking over her crib, she takes in the world from a brand new and very short perspective. Looking at the portrait again, she confirms her fears. That hair color belongs to only one noble family. There's no doubt about it. She's been reborn as a member of the Tyrant family, the Waltzers. Her new parents are none other than Michael Waltzer, the battlefield demon, and his cunning wife, Adelina. This is gonna be complicated. She remembers the current chancellor, Julius, a red-haired man known as the first queen's right-hand man. A dark memory surfaces of the queen ordering an execution, with the red-haired Julia standing by. Back in her crib, the pink-haired baby shivers with unease. She tries to reassure herself, thinking that since the Tyrant couple is dead, the family must have fallen from power. But her panic rises as she screams internally, realizing no one is coming to care for her. Clank! Just then, a maid enters the room, and the baby waits silently. The maid stares down with a bottle, but the baby shivers, thinking it's way too cold. After a botched feeding, the baby is furious, thinking the maid's attempt was awful as the woman looks stressed. Tears well up in her eyes as she realizes her expectations of proper care were a fantasy. Her diaper is still dirty. She fumes that even a disgraced noble family should at least know how to take care of a baby. A bright sunny day shines through the window, marking the passage of time. She has finally hit her limit, while the maid stands far off in the distance, unconcerned. Suddenly, a different, gentler maid begins patting her bottom. But even this small comfort can't change the fact that it's been half a day with no food or drink. A baby bottle and formula sit untouched on a nearby table, a symbol of the staff's neglect. A flash of light catches her attention in the grand, empty room. Her eyes widen in shock as a bottle suddenly flies through the air, right towards her crib. She buries her face in her pillow as the first maid peeks in from the doorway before leaving again. The second maid silently picks up the formula container, her expression unreadable. The baby watches her leave, feeling completely abandoned. As the grand door slams shut, she is once again left all alone. She realizes with a jolt that the flying bottle must have been her own magic, and she needs to test it. In her past life as Liz, she had very little magic, forcing her to study diligently to master it. Now, as a baby, she tries to cast a simple flame spell. Whoosh! A massive, complex magic circle erupts around her, revealing the insane power of the Tyrant family's bloodline. She reaches out a tiny hand, feeling the immense magical energy swirling around her. She successfully summons the bottle and happily drinks, thinking it's delicious. Self-care level? Expert. She notices that so far, only the servants ever seem to handle baby care. After her meal, she lies in her crib looking small and lonely in the huge room. She drifts off to sleep, hugging her bottle and thinking she can manage on her own. As two maids report that there's been no change, a cold voice answers, "None." It's Michael, her father. His terrifying presence makes the maids tremble in fear. The demon of the battlefield has arrived, his gaze as intense as ever, but the baby is completely oblivious, happily milk-drunk, and dreaming of being full. Michael asks if there's been any change, and a maid reports that everything is proceeding smoothly. He smirks, telling them there's no need to report such obvious things. He decides he should probably check on his daughter himself once in a while. The camera pans out to reveal a massive mansion with a legion of servants. One maid thinks taking care of the baby is easy, but the baby vehemently disagrees. Another maid is surprised her colleague likes babies, while the baby again thinks, absolutely not. She realizes the horrifying truth. With so many servants, everyone just assumes someone else is doing the work. The baby lies alone in her golden crib, a tiny figure in a vast, opulent world. She knows that if it weren't for her own magic, she would have died from neglect by now. Sudden presence makes her eyes snap open. A chilling shiver runs down her spine as she sees a pair of icy eyes staring at her from the darkness. In a blink, the room is empty and silent once more. She wonders who that was, noting his overwhelming presence only appears when she's alone. A few hours pass. The mysterious man, her father, is back, and his glowing eyes pierce the darkness, leaving her paralyzed with fear. A few more days pass in a blur of neglect and anxiety. But now she's ready for anything, rocking a pair of sunglasses and holding her bottle. She's dealing with it. Back on the floor, she ponders the mysterious visits as a dark energy fills the room. Peeking through the door is her father, Michael, whose intense stare makes her wonder if he's a secret kid lover. She tries to say, "Nice to meet you," but it just comes out as baby gurgles. Mission failed. Waving goodbye, she realizes her attempt at interspecies communication was a total bust. Later, another red-haired man peeks in, but this one is definitely not her dad. Deciding to switch tactics, she deploys her ultimate weapon, maximum cuteness. It works. Her father is finally here, standing right over her crib. She immediately regrets her decision up close. His face is absolutely terrifying, but then a large hand gently pats her head, and she looks up in shock. Her father flinches, seemingly surprised by his own action. As he turns away, a maid approaches, and the baby watches them both, confused. Suddenly her father lunges, and she panics, thinking he's discovered her secret. Teask. He grabs the neglectful maid, who clicks her tongue in annoyance. Big mistake. In a flash, he's reaching for the baby, who screams, realizing her magic is sealed in his presence. What were you trying to do? He snarls at the maid, who gets smacked so hard blood flies, leaving the baby stunned. Michael grips the maid's wrist with murderous rage, his eyes promising a world of hurt. He questions if this is what she calls attending to her, gesturing to the spilled milk. From her crib, the baby has a bird's eye view of the unfolding drama. He draws his sword, accusing the maid of filing false reports as she pathetically begs for her life. The baby is horrified, thinking he's really going to kill her, and lets out a desperate baby cry. With a baby scream, she cries out, "Wait!" trying to stop the blade. Miraculously, her father pauses, his sword inches from the maid. Her tearful, outstretched hands seem to have gotten through to the battlefield demon. Michael looks down, utterly bewildered, as he now holds his crying daughter. A subordinate rushes in, stammering in shock to see the fearsome Duke holding a baby. Looking at the man who just protected her, she softly thanks for the first time, "Father." But the tender moment shatters when a portrait reminds her the tyrant Michael Walzer is very much alive. It all clicks into place. This isn't the future. She's been reborn into the past as a doomed child of the Tyrant family before their fall. A new day dawns, but her world has been turned upside down. Lying in her crib, she's lost in thought when a new maid asks if she's all right. A kinder servant finally gives her some warm milk, but the baby still can't relax. The maid chats away, mentioning that Lady Adelina will become Chancellor next month. The news hits her like a ton of bricks. The family's downfall began 1 year after that appointment, which means she's on a 1-year timer. Her eyes flash with power as she makes a vow. There's no way she's letting that future happen. The painful memory of her past life's end fuels her resolve. She is not going through that again. Clutching her tiny fist, she realizes she holds the ultimate trump card, knowledge of the future. After the incident, the staff is suddenly on their best behavior, even cleaning the nursery. She celebrates this small win with a triumphant pose in her new frilly dress. But the happy moment is fleeting as she gets down to business with a serious pout. Her mission is clear, if a little daunting. Figure out how one baby can stop an entire family's ruin. She reflects that while she studied hard in her past life, human relationships were never her strong suit. Just then, her father appears again, his gaze as unreadable and intimidating as ever. She gulps, once again reminded that his default expression is terrifying. As he looms over her crib, his oppressive aura feels like a physical weight. But she remembers that it was the same tyrant who protected her. He was a father first. Operation Win Over Dad is a go. She summons a shower of flowers, flashing her most dazzling baby smile. The plan backfires spectacularly. His terrifying aura intensifies, and she realizes she failed miserably. No more fear. She steels her nerves, flipping a mental switch on to face the tyrant head-on. New plan. Make him an ally, even if it means practicing on a life-sized cutout first. Sorry, Dad. Step 1. Wrap herself in a magic shield to withstand his killer aura, because if she lets her guard down, she might actually puke. She once thought her father was angry, but looking back, she wonders if it was something else entirely. Because now, the red-haired tyrant is standing before her, awkwardly holding a frilly dress and a pink bunny. She realizes it's his overwhelming aura that scares everyone, even animals flee his presence. She wails for him to be gentle with babies, and a maid remarks that it looks like a normal family moment. The maid suggests the young lady must like him, causing him to roar, "Really?" before turning his fury on the terrified servant, demanding to know if she likes it, while the baby thinks he's scaring off her only ally. His expression softens ever so slightly, and she thinks for the second time, "Father." She looks up at him with wide, hopeful eyes, a tiny hint of trust forming. He gently offers her a different stuffed animal, a brown bunny with a little red bow. Clutching her new toy, she watches them leave, thinking that at least he's not a total monster. The maid follows him out of the room, carrying a pillow as they discuss her care. As the maid wonders about feeding and bathing, an electrifying idea dawns on Michael with a terrifying intensity. His face breaks into a deranged grin as he declares, "I shall bathe with my daughter." The maid quickly tries to intervene, reminding him they have magical tools for cleaning. No need for all this. The baby is absolutely mortified. This was not in the Win Over Dad plan, but she quickly gets on board, cheering for bath time, which catches him by surprise as the maid sighs in resignation. Now, in a majestic purple robe, he holds her up like Simba, much to the horror of the maid in the background. The maid bravely scolds him for scaring the baby and our hero is impressed by her courage. This lady's got guts. Following the maid's instructions, he awkwardly pulls the baby close, and a sudden spark zaps between them. Snuggled against his chest, she's amazed. His abs are like a custom-molded baby seat. She feels an incredible sense of stability, safe and sound in her terrifying father's arms. He carries her into the most ridiculously lavish bathroom she's ever seen. Peeking over his shoulder, she eyes the bath products with a growing sense of dread. Her mind flashes to being scrubbed with Supermint toothpaste as she screams for a servant to save her from this fate. Somehow, she survives. Back in her crib, she's completely drained while the maid breathes a sigh of relief. A title card commemorates the event, a cozy father-daughter bath time, featuring a mortified maid and a baby in goggles. Later, the maid tries to feed her, but she refuses the milk, feeling bloated and sick. Ugh. Suddenly, she feels awful, and the maid cries out in alarm. A sharp pain hits her. The maid rushes off to get her father, as the baby wonders what's happening to her. Whoosh! A brilliant golden magic circle erupts from her tiny body, flooding the room with light. Her father bursts through the door, yelling her name, Elizabeth, as he sees the blinding magical surge. He and the maid rush toward her crib, their faces etched with panic. By the time they reach her, she's sleeping peacefully, the magic gone as quickly as it came. Her father looks down at her with genuine concern, a rare expression for the battlefield demon. He orders the maid to call a doctor just in case, and she immediately agrees. He stands watch over her golden crib, his protective gaze never leaving his sleeping daughter. Suddenly, a blue-haired young woman jolts awake in a bed, stunned. I'm back to my old body? She looks across the room and sees her baby self still sleeping soundly in the crib. It's Liz, her past self, now somehow in the same room, peering over the crib's railing. Confused about her old form's return, Liz pokes the baby's forehead, triggering a flash of light. Pop, she's back in the baby's body, wondering what just happened. With a determined smirk, she starts to put the pieces together. Her adult form, Liz, seems to have manifested as a separate entity from her baby body. Now existing as a spirit-like form, Liz watches her baby self sleeping in the crib. She realizes the immense magic is now tied to her adult form, which opens up a world of possibilities. A pop! Liz's adult body fully materializes, and she theorizes this is how her past self appeared. But then a critical question arises. What happens if someone touches the sleeping Elizabeth while Liz is manifested? The answer is immediate. The baby wakes up with a jolt. She remembers reading that an overload of magic can misfire. Thinking she hasn't used much magic lately, she wonders if her parents' doting is the cause of this magical buildup. Just then, her father storms in again, asking if she's safe, and she responds with a happy baby gurgle. He glances toward a mirror, where the maid is comforting a distraught-looking old man. A worried-looking old man with a white beard anxiously asks about Elizabeth's condition. The red-haired Duke roars at the doctor to hurry, who stammers that they haven't examined her yet, while the baby thinks it's sweet. He's so worried but feels bad for the poor old man. With an angelic smile, the baby tries to signal that she's perfectly fine, hoping to stop her father's bloody rampage before it starts. The doctor nervously checks the baby's heartbeat as her father kneels in the background, looking completely defeated. After the checkup, the doctor announces that the young lady is in perfect health, which seems to shock her father, whose eyes flare with disbelief. He erupts in fury, questioning how she could be fine after refusing her milk, and the baby worries that poor grandpa is about to get vaporized. Deciding she has to intervene, she thinks it's a little embarrassing, but prepares to speak up to save the doctor. Reaching out with her tiny hands, she tries to call out to her father. She gives him her most winning baby look, silently pleading for him to pay attention to her. Her desperate plea works, she turns his gaze toward her, his expression softening just a bit. He gently scoops her up, and she settles into his arms, looking up at him. As she calms down, she realizes her stomachache wasn't an illness, it was a buildup of too much magic. She squeezes her eyes shut, concentrating with all her might to control the magical energy welling up inside her. Ugh! With a grunt of pure effort, she pushes her power outward. Pop! Her adult form, Liz, materializes in the room, looking over at her baby self, sleeping peacefully in the crib. Stretching her limbs, Liz feels like she's finally starting to get the hang of this whole out-of-body experience. She approaches a grand, ornate mirror to get a good look at her manifested form. Admiring her reflection, she notices her complexion looks healthier and wonders if she's even put on a little weight. A determined smile spreads across her face as she realizes that with this adult body, her options for saving the family have just exploded. Looking down at her simple dress, she thinks it's time for a little magical wardrobe change. With a flash of power, she transforms her outfit into a pristine maid's uniform. Operation Infiltrate is a go. She marvels at her new look, realizing that a body made of pure magic means unlimited outfit changes. A new plan begins to form in her mind. She strikes a confident pose, ready to put her new disguise to good use. With the sly grin, she peeks out the door, ready for a little reconnaissance mission around the mansion. She happily hums a little tune to herself while exploring the massive noble's estate. Taking a moment to enjoy the sunshine, she soaks in the simple joy of being outside. She continues her tour down a long, elegant hallway, noting that her magical body still has all 5 senses. As she wanders through another richly decorated room, she tries to memorize the layout. But the mansion is just too big. She slumps to the floor, mentally exhausted from the information overload. "Hello, tired Z." Her ears perk up as she spots another maid carrying a tray along an outdoor balcony. The delicious-smelling food catches her attention, and she immediately guesses it must be for her father. Bingo! The maid is granted entry, and Liz celebrates finding her father's office. Inside, Michael is hard at work at his desk, buried under a mountain of paperwork. The moment the maid enters, his oppressive aura flares, and she quickly offers her deepest apologies. While taking a bite of his sandwich, he demands a detailed report on his daughter, making the maid flinch. He grills her on every tiny detail of the baby's day, but before the maid can leave to check, he tells her not to bother. Wah! Using magic to eavesdrop, Liz panics when she hears her father is heading her way. Scrambling, she frantically wonders what to do as his footsteps get closer. Too late. The grand doors to the hallway swing open as her father steps out. He pauses, sensing a faint trace of magic in the air and wondering who could have used it. His suspicion leads him straight to Elizabeth's nursery, and he reaches for the door. He enters the room and stands over the golden crib, looking down at his daughter. The baby smiles brightly, thinking of her mother and happily introducing herself as Elizabeth. In a quick flashback, Liz panics as she realizes her father is coming and that she's about to be caught. She unleashes a blast of magic to propel herself back to her room as fast as possible. Flying through the air like a magical torpedo, she makes a desperate beeline for the nursery. Just as she disappears, her father's silhouette appears in the doorway. She tumbles through the air, heading back to her body, just in the nick of time. Back in her crib, she sits up with a huge sigh of relief. She made it just as the doors opened. Her father softly offers to give her another bath, and she's hit with a traumatic flashback of being scrubbed within an inch of her life. The baby wonders why her father, the Knight Commander, is always stuck in his office, instead of, commanding knights. A vision shows him buried under mountains of paperwork, and she questions why he's doing it all by himself. She realizes the mansion is seriously understaffed. She barely saw a soul during her reconnaissance mission as Liz. A pair of gentle hands lift her up. Her father holds her close, asking if she isn't afraid of him. She babbles, "Da," thinking she isn't scared at all, even as he asks if she fears his hands, which have killed people. With a determined look, she thinks it's because those actions couldn't be helped. A flashback shows him as a faceless knight, standing victorious on a battlefield over a fallen foe. She understands that if it wasn't his true desire, then he sacrificed himself for the nation, just as she has. He seems taken aback by his own vulnerability, wondering why he's even saying these things to a baby. She looks up at him with wide, understanding eyes. Snuggling into his chest, she offers silent comfort, and his expression softens. She peeks over his shoulder, her mission to win him over, back on track. The maid approaches with a shy smile, but says it's nothing when he looks over. Blushing, the maid compliments him, noting he's become quite good at caring for his daughter. The baby smirks proudly from his arms, thinking it's a simple task for her, of course. A hilarious flashback reveals he once obliterated a practice pillow, proving he wasn't exactly a natural. He accepts the compliment with a stoic, "Very well," trying to play it cool. Mission accomplished for the day, the baby drifts off to sleep on a soft cushion. As the baby sleeps, Liz's adult form materializes in the golden room. She worries that if her father is too busy, her befriend dad plan will fail, leading to their doom. But then an idea strikes. Bathed in a brilliant light, she formulates a new plan. Now in her maid disguise, she hurries through the hall, pondering why the Knight Commander is stuck on permanent desk duty. She grumbles to herself, thinking that if she were still Liz, she could blow through that paperwork in no time. She walks purposefully down the long, empty corridor of the massive mansion. Panic! She almost called herself Liz out loud, and quickly reminds herself to stay in character. Taking matters into her own hands, she sits at her father's desk, ready to work her magic. She gets to work organizing the documents, hoping to leave him with only the simple task of signing. In her imagination, her father is absolutely delighted, thinking her help is a godsend. In reality, her father returns to find the finished paperwork and looks deeply suspicious. He sits at his desk, staring at the mysterious documents, a fireplace roaring behind him. She beams with satisfaction, proud of her covert operation. Her father looks down, lost in thought, as Liz realizes from afar that she needs a new strategy. Later, she's back in baby form, experiencing pure bliss as she naps on her father's chest. She nestles in, thinking this feels amazing. She cheekily thinks he has her magic and past life memories to thank for this peaceful moment. She muses that his intimidating presence, which terrifies the maids, is even more overwhelming than his magic. As he holds her, he's surrounded by a fiery aura, vowing to increase the night's training. She mentally cheers them on. She lets out a little baby noise, and he asks if she's met him yet. Her eyes widen in shock. Oh no! She got so caught up with her dad that she completely forgot about the other key player. A dramatic title card introduces the ruthless Julius Waltzer, and the baby freaks out. This is not good. A thoughtful chibi character from the creative team reminds readers to support them on their official site. In a flashback, a crowd of nobles watch as a younger, red-haired version of her father walks away. An attendant informs the young boy that His Excellency is skipping sword training again, and he clenches his jaw in frustration. The boy demands to know what happened, but the attendant seems hesitant to explain. Suddenly, a young man with pink hair and piercing yellow eyes appears, his expression one of pure shock. Back in the present, the baby realizes her dad is so obsessed with her, he's totally forgotten about Julius. Or maybe, she thinks, her father's terrifying aura is just scaring all the potential help away. She thinks that a busy father like hers should be getting help from Julius Waltzer, the future chancellor. Held in her father's arms, a new determination sparkles in her eyes. She remembers the Julius from her past life, the first princess's right hand, a man with a blank, doll-like expression. Rumor had it he only ever listened to the savior queen, Lady Claudia, and was incredibly popular with the other nobles. She recalls her past self, a blue-haired woman, watching as Julius stood before a line of officials. In a painful flashback, he glares at her with ice-cold eyes, questioning how a lowly civil official dares speak before the queen. Kneeling before her, he had scornfully asked if the royal court had truly fallen so far. She clenches her tiny fist, remembering his constant belittling. He was just an awful person, really. Ugh! The frustrating memory makes her thrash angrily in her sleep. Pondering for a moment, she figures the only thing that Jerk had in common with her father was their red hair. She flashes back to her life as a blue-haired official, remembering how she secretly memorized all the noble profiles, only to be bullied for it. His record stated he entered the palace at age 12, a fact she now realizes is far too young. A light bulb goes off. There must have been a serious reason for him to join the palace so early. Elsewhere, a young, pink-haired Julius thinks about the weekly sword lessons his father had insisted upon. An attendant informs him the lesson is rescheduled, and Julius is livid to hear it's because of baby Elizabeth. Impossible, he yells, rushing off to demand the carriage. He's heading straight for the Waltzer estate. At that very estate, her father is enjoying some sunshine with her, telling a maid that sunlight is apparently important. His peaceful day is cut short when he spots a carriage approaching in the distance. He muses that he wasn't expecting visitors, while the baby looks on in confusion. He tells the maid not to bother investigating, as it seems their unexpected guests are heading right for them. Julius bursts from the carriage, screaming, "Father!" and the sudden noise makes the baby flinch hard. The shock is too much for her baby body, and she erupts into uncontrollable tears, panicking at her own reaction. Her sudden wailing sends the nearby maid into a tizzy. Her father gives a silent, piercing glare as Julius clutches his ears, totally overwhelmed by the noise. Once things have calmed down, Julius stands defeated before his father, who now sits holding the baby peacefully. The young boy nervously stammers, "F father," but her father shuts him down with a cold, simple command, "Go back." As the dejected Julius turns to leave, the baby watches him, recognizing him for the first time in this life. She tugs on her father's shirt and babbles that it's nap time, creating a perfect escape. The maid understands the cue and gently takes the baby from her father's arms. As she's carried away, she sees the hurt on Julius's face and realizes her father doesn't actually hate him. A gentle, knowing smile spreads across her face as she snuggles into the maid's shoulder. The scene transitions to a quiet, sun-drenched stone fountain in the garden. Lonely Julius is huddled against a wall, looking completely heartbroken. A close-up reveals tears welling in his golden eyes from his father's harsh dismissal. Just then, a blue-haired maid, Liz's adult form, appears before him with a gentle aura. With a kind and radiant smile, she asks the young boy if he's all right. Startled, Julius quickly tries to compose himself, demanding to know who she is. He insists he wasn't crying, just had something in his eye, and Liz can't help but think how adorable this baby Julius is. It's a shame, she thinks, that this beautiful boy will grow up to be such a cold-hearted jerk. Looking up at her, utterly mortified, he asks, "You were watching?" A little later, the two of them are now sitting calmly together, in a field of flowers. They sit side by side in a moment of quiet reflection under the bright sun. Leaning in conspiratorially, Liz exclaims, "Let's make a plan," which completely startles Julius. She strikes a pose and announces the super operation Best Buddies Parent-Child, leaving him totally baffled. Now they sit with their arms crossed in silent solidarity, or perhaps mutual grumpiness. She gets in his face again, ready to strategize, but he just wants to know why this is all happening so suddenly. With a triumphant smile, she re-announces her plan, the Super BFF Parent and Child Operation. Julius gives her a withering look and asks, "What kind of half-witted name is that?" Liz points a finger right back at him and retorts, "Are you even an adult?" Her face flushes red as she stammers, completely caught off guard. Julius smugly points out she was just in tears, and now she's acting tough. She fumes, thinking he's always been a spoiled brat. After a moment, Julius leans back and agrees to hear her out, challenging her to explain her grand operation. He smirks, and she's instantly reminded that a tyrant's son is also a tyrant. This kid is impossible. He asks why she's making a funny face, completely oblivious to the murderous rage she's trying to suppress. She grabs her head and mentally screams that he's still so insolent. A somber flashback reveals the silent, emotional distance between her father and a much younger Julius. Later, at an agonizingly quiet dinner, the baby feels the suffocating tension in the room. Julius breaks the silence, announcing he'll be returning to the academy tomorrow. His father barely looks up from his plate, giving a cold, one-word acknowledgement. Trying again, Julius proudly announces he won the sword fighting tournament, only to receive the same flat response. The baby watches this painful exchange, a new plan already forming in her sparkling eyes. This is a disaster. She realizes her own praise won't be enough to bridge the gap between them. Mustering his courage, Julius asks his father to go deer hunting with him. The baby internally panics, thinking he can't use her as an excuse. The servants can take care of her. Seeing an opening, Julius boldly offers to hunt the deer himself. But his father, gently holding the sleeping baby, shuts him down immediately, saying it's not necessary. Peeking through one eye, she realizes her father isn't giving him any openings and wonders why. Operation 3. Act childlike. Julius throws a fit, screaming there's no way he could ever do that. She tells him he'll never know if he doesn't try, but he cuts her off, reminding her this is the notoriously strict House of Walzer. Looking into his determined eyes, she understands. In this household, indulgence is a weakness that's never permitted. She recalls the history of the Tyrant family, where a normal parent-child bond seems impossible. With a sad expression, she apologizes, realizing she was asking for too much. Julius watches her leave, telling himself his father's affection for the baby is just a fleeting whim. He grits his teeth, vowing to work harder and achieve real results to finally earn his father's approval. Standing alone, he steels his resolve, determined to become as strong as his father. With battered hands, he grips his sword, ready to endure any training to reach his goal. Back with Liz, she has another idea. The pick-me-up and hug-me operation, which seems to get his attention. She racks her brain for more plans, clearly stressed, while he just stares at her curiously. He finally speaks, calling her a strange one, and she's so shocked, she can't even respond. A tiny, chibi version of her pops up, fuming that he's the cheeky one for calling her strange. But Julius is blushing and smiling, admitting to himself that this is much better than seeing her cry. She smiles back, thinking the same thing, seeing him smile is so much better. With renewed purpose, Julius walks confidently down the corridor. He stops, a determined glint in his eye, thinking the time has finally come to use that. He's been honing a special technique with his instructors, and it's finally ready to be unleashed. A gentle, sparkling magic flows from his hands toward the sleeping baby, who wakes up with a confused coo. He leans over her crib, thinking it's perfect timing. The baby looks puzzled as he covers his face and whispers, "Peekaboo." Boo. He reveals his face, and the baby erupts in a fit of happy giggles. Suddenly, a deep voice from the doorway asks what that was. It's his father, who has been watching the whole time. His father's aura turns terrifyingly dark as he looms over them, demanding to know what that magic was. Julius quickly explains it's just a simple trick his teachers taught him to make babies laugh. To his absolute shock, his father covers his own face to try. He's actually gonna do it. Boom! The father unleashes a cataclysmic peekaboo, sending a shockwave that blasts Julius and the baby across the room. As they fly through the air, Julius spots a stuffed animal hurtling toward them and yells, "Watch out!" He twists mid-air, diving to shield the baby from the impact. Holding her tight, he breathes a sigh of relief. The baby thinks that her second life almost ended before it began. She realizes the technique itself isn't dangerous, it's just that her dad is so overpowered he turns everything into a weapon of mass destruction. Her father places a gentle hand on Julius's shoulder, a silent gesture of approval. Julius beams with pure joy, as his father tells him that as her brother, it's his duty to protect Elizabeth. A red-haired man holds his baby sister, his thoughts filled with love for her as she happily reaches for him. Thump. The baby snuggles against her blushing brother, hitting him right in the feels with an adorable attack. A voice declares the mission was unforeseen, but ultimately, a smashing success. Later, the blue-haired maid tells Julius not to worry about the details, since they've grown closer. Julius is flustered as she cheerfully claims they were already bonding, bluntly telling her to forget moving into the palace. He stands in the garden, a serious expression on his face as he contemplates her strange behavior. His mood suddenly shifts to fury as he demands to know how she knew about his palace invitation, a secret he hasn't even told his father. His suspicion grows, and he points out that she's been acting strange from the very beginning. Smack. A new thought hits him, and he accuses her of being a spy. She panics, frantically denying the accusation and admitting she messed up. Elizabeth mentally facepalms, unable to believe her brother kept their father in the dark. Spiraling, the blue-haired woman desperately searches for an explanation and blurts out the unbelievable truth. "I'm Elizabeth." Julius is rendered completely speechless by her shocking confession. She immediately regrets her words, internally screaming her own name in a fit of panic. With her cover blown, she bows her head in defeat before a very confused Julius. He stares in disbelief, struggling to process what he just heard. Wait, huh? Mortified, she clutches her head, wondering what she was thinking. While Julius demands to know what she's talking about, he sighs, asking her to explain what she could possibly mean by claiming to be Elizabeth. She tries to play it cool, laughing nervously and pretending she never said such a crazy thing. Julius isn't buying it for a second. He threatens to call his father about an intruder, forcing her to grab him and plead for a chance to explain. She hesitates, realizing that the truth is so outlandish he'll never believe her. Having none of it, Julius grabs her and fiercely demands an explanation, scaring her into a tiny eep. He gestures to his sleeping sister's crib, challenging her to prove her claim right there, and she confidently agrees. Believing her brother is kind enough to at least listen, she decides showing him will be much faster than telling him. As she leans over the crib, a panicked Julius shouts for her to stop. A brilliant light engulfs them, and he demands to know what she's doing to his sister. A moment later, baby Elizabeth peeks over the edge of the crib, looking perfectly healthy and impossibly cute. The baby babbles happily, leaving Julius completely stunned and asking, "What was that?" As she keeps babbling her name, Julius stares at her, cautiously asking if it's really her. He asks if she can change back, and the baby just waves her hands with a joyful smile. Whoa! The blue-haired woman's form magically appears above the crib as Julius watches in shock. A gentle hand strokes the baby's head, and she peacefully drifts back to sleep. The woman now explains the impossible. Her adult body is a projection, created entirely from baby Elizabeth's magic. Elizabeth reflects that while her brother sounds bossy, he was just as demanding in her previous life. A memory surfaces of Julius as a strict taskmaster, forcing them to work through the night over a single mistake. Julius, surprisingly, accepts the bizarre situation, while she prepares to tell him the long story of how this happened. The scene transitions, showing the two of them beginning their unbelievable conversation. In a quick flashback, the woman reaches out, her expression full of earnest conviction. Julius quickly puts the pieces together, asking if she has memories of a future life, and she's impressed he caught on so fast. Yes, she confirms, proudly praising her genius big brother the prodigy of the Royal Academy. Julius recalls an ancient text about a wizard who foresaw the future and created a magical duplicate, wondering if this is a similar case. However, Elizabeth knows there's a crucial part of the story she can't tell him, remembering a secret from the archives. In her past life, she found a document slated for destruction, revealing that Tyrant Michael entered the demon forest alone. The record stated he was surrounded by magical beasts, and that no reinforcements ever came to his aid. When he was on the brink of death, he found a legendary magic crystal, which would later become a national treasure. He then offered that crystal to the royal family, and this singular achievement is what allowed Julius, the child of a fallen house, to become chancellor. Back in the present, Julius looks down in deep thought, absorbing the weight of her story. When he asks for more details, she clenches her fist, declaring that she can't say anything else. Julius looks up, surprised by her sudden refusal to continue. But instead of anger, a bright, determined smile spreads across his face as a new resolve fills him. Julius beams with contentment, thinking that making choices to strengthen his father is all that matters. He tells the blue-haired maid that all he wants is for his brother to understand him, while she hopes things can stay this way. Liz flashes to a dark future where Julius fights alone, vowing that timeline will never come to pass. She knows that no matter what happens, everything will be okay, as long as Julius and his father stand together. Julius suddenly points to a portrait of a blue-haired woman, and both he and Liz look completely stunned. He cautiously approaches a grand door and calls out, just as a maid begins to open it. Inside, he finds the purple-haired baby lying in her crib, who looks up at him and coos, "Boo." Julius is not amused, telling her that's not an answer and that their father is waiting for them. The baby happily babbles her agreement as Julius gets her ready. Their father appears, remarking on how concerned Julius seems to be about his little sister, Elizabeth. A terrifying, dark aura suddenly envelops Julius as his father glares down, leaving the nearby maid paralyzed with fear. Moments later, the father is calmly holding the sleeping baby, the intense pressure gone. The baby peeks through one eye, relieved that her dad didn't seem to notice her scheme. Julius also breathes a silent sigh of relief, thankful he dodged that bullet. Her father stands with the baby, facing Julius in a moment of quiet understanding. He finally invites Julius to accompany them, and the boy's face lights up as he eagerly accepts. Lying in her crib, the baby smiles, thrilled that Julius can finally talk to his father normally. Later, a maid nervously holds a bottle, and the baby thinks to herself that the maid's aura is surprisingly scary. As she drinks her milk, she muses on the perks of being a noble, like getting into places she couldn't before. The baby gives a satisfied and adorable smile after finishing her meal. The scene shifts to Julius and his father working silently in an office piled high with documents. Liz's plan, Operation Bonding with Father, is for Julius to help with work, an idea he seems to be considering. His father remarks that it's more efficient to use knights for their strength, and Julius agrees. It's kept the magic beast down. But Julius argues that's a different issue entirely, pushing to stay and help. A tiny chibi version of Julius thinks that surely a little break from the paperwork wouldn't hurt. He clarifies that it's fine for now. But things get serious again with next month's inauguration. His father considers the upcoming ceremony, where a woman named Adelina Walzer will be central, and Julius watches him intently. The father confirms Adelina will become chancellor, but a sudden interruption from a maid cuts him short. The maid rushes in, frantically trying to report something about the young lady, grabbing both men's attention. The baby lies in her crib, contemplating their upcoming trip to the royal palace. She clutches a stuffed bunny with a decidedly grumpy expression on her face. A terrifying memory of her killer, First Queen Claudia, flashes before her eyes, and the baby shivers in fear. Her thoughts turn to Lady Adelina, a brilliant woman who rose to power through sheer talent. Adelina was a woman of unwavering justice, who refused to tolerate any corruption among the nobility. While this earned her the respect of the common people she promoted, it also created powerful enemies. The nobles despised her because she had purged almost all of the corrupt officials from the previous king's era. Though she was labeled an evil woman, Liz recalls it was thanks to Adelina that she, an orphan, got her start. The maid explains that the baby has been making noises all morning, as the little girl lets out a huge yawn. But it's not crying, the baby is singing, and her song summons a flutter of butterflies and birds. Her father is absolutely thunderstruck, yelling in disbelief, "Is Elizabeth a genius?" His outburst sends a toy flying, but the baby has already tired herself out and fallen asleep in his arms. A month later, as they prepare to head to the royal palace, Julius nervously holds his sleeping sister. The family stands together in their finest attire, ready for their formal appearance at the palace. The baby is completely starstruck, her eyes sparkling at the sight of her father in his formal night uniform. She snuggles into his chest, thinking he's the ultimate muscle dad. Their royal carriage, drawn by 4 pristine white horses, sets off for the capital. On the way, their father warns Julius to be careful, as the palace is a different world. The baby glances out the window, seeing a reflection of someone behind bars, realizing the situation is more complicated than she thought. A procession of carriages arrives at the breathtakingly grand royal palace. A pristine white boot steps out onto a regal carpet, signaling the arrival of nobility. The Walzer family stands beside their grand carriage, with the father, Julius, the baby, and a maid all ready to depart. Wide-eyed and dressed in black lace, the baby looks on with a sense of unease, thinking to herself, still. As they arrive, she finds the majestic royal palace strangely nostalgic, but the old fear still grips her. Her father asks if she needs a diaper change, but she responds with an indignant chibi scream, yelling, "No!" A guide leads them down a long corridor, announcing that the office of Lady Adelina Walzer is just ahead. The baby realizes with a jolt that she never visited this part of the palace during her previous life as Liz. Her father calls out to a blue-haired woman named Adelina, who turns and stares at the baby he's holding, thinking it can't be what she assumes. The baby immediately notices the dark circles under the woman's eyes, a clear sign of exhaustion. Her internal diagnosis continues, noting the woman's haggard face and lifeless blue hair. She concludes that this woman is a classic, overworked person, a painful reminder of her own past life. Her father, Michael, suggests Adelina should rest, and the baby thinks even a tyrant like him shows mercy to the overworked. But Adelina brushes it off, asking if Michael can go a week without sleep, prompting the baby to fume that he's a, quote, muscle monster. Julius gently tells his mother not to overwork herself, and she thanks him with a warm smile. But as Adelina reads a letter, the baby senses something is wrong. This peaceful family scene isn't what she expected at all. She wonders if the rumors about Adelina were lies, but a more pressing question hangs in the air. Adelina's expression darkens as she glares at them, demanding to know why they brought that here. Michael explains that he's been the one caring for the baby, which seems to provoke an off-screen outburst from Julius. Julius defends his sister Elizabeth, telling his mother she's not a thing, but Adelina furiously retorts that's precisely why she doesn't want that monster near her. The baby's heart sinks as she recalls all her efforts to unite her father and brother. She did everything to save the Walzer family, only to find herself hated by her own mother. Adelina's cold glare says it all. She despises the child so much, she won't even speak her name. With a terrifying snarl, Adelina screams for them to take that thing away from her immediately. Julius is stunned into silence, while his father's face hardens, seeing his wife's violent rejection. It's a crushing blow for the baby. Her own mother hates her and refuses to even acknowledge her name. Her father's expression turns grim and resolute in the face of his wife's hostility. He hands the baby to a maid, instructing her to prepare the knight's order for the upcoming ceremony. As her father and brother turn to leave, the baby panics, wondering if they're really going to abandon her here. But Adelina suddenly stops them, demanding they take the child with them, a sentiment the baby silently echoes. Her father glances back, a silent standoff unfolding in the doorway of the office. Adelina collapses in exhaustion while the baby sleeps in a basket, thinking her mother is the one who truly needs rest. Adelina worries that her mother would hate her more than anyone else, then coldly instructs the maid not to move the baby around. The maid nervously agrees, and the baby realizes with horror that her mother is treating her like an inanimate object. Now left in the office, the baby surveys her mother's domain and spots a mysterious, glowing object on the desk. After the maid leaves to fetch tea, the baby decides it's time to take matters into her own tiny hands. From her basket, she summons a surge of purple magic, reaching a glowing hand toward the desk. A powerful beam of magic shoots from her hand, engulfing the mysterious object in a vibrant light. Adelina picks up a now glowing cloth from her desk, completely baffled by what's happening. As she holds the basket with one arm, she looks over her shoulder, utterly confused. Her eyes follow the maid, returning with the tea, her mind racing to understand the strange events. The baby sees it all. The maid is mixing a specific flower into the tea leaves, a memory from her past life flashing before her eyes. She has a horrifying vision of the maid, conspiring with a hooded figure to usurp the Walzer household. She recalls her studies in the royal archives. In small doses, this flower is a medicine, but in large doses, it becomes a deadly poison, and she realizes her mother is about to be assassinated. Helpless in her basket, she watches as her mother remains oblivious to the danger on her desk. The maid enters, her face a mask of anxiety as she carries the poisoned tea. Adelina instructs her to set the tea down, while the baby keenly observes the newcomer's sickly complexion. Peeking over the edge of her basket, the baby watches the pale-faced maid, connecting the dots. Her mind reels as she wonders if the terrifying vision she just saw has already come to pass. She tries to convince herself it was just a dream, but she can't shake the fear as her mother picks up the cup. The baby watches in sheer panic as her mother brings the poisoned tea to her lips. The baby steels herself, deciding she has no choice but to use a clone. A maid informs the blue-haired Adelina it's time to change, and she wonders if it's that time already, while the pink-haired baby sleeps on her desk. A new maid with a white bow approaches, and the lavender-haired baby wonders with dread why it's her. A sharp-eyed blonde man watches as the maid carries a basket, presumably with the baby inside. The blonde man decisively takes the basket from the nervous maid. He holds the basket firmly, informing the maid that he'll be keeping the baby with him. He then suggests an alternate task for the maid to perform. The maid looks horrified as he mentions serving some tea. She stammers that she already served it, and the baby looks up in panic as the man questions her. With cold blue eyes, the man tells the maid to take a rest. A threatening aura descends upon the terrified maid. Blood drips from the maid's mouth as she stares in shock, and the baby thinks about the man before her. The baby wonders if this man is a servant of the royal palace. The pink-haired boy calls out to his father, wanting to discuss Elizabeth. The red-haired man coolly agrees to listen. The boy asks his father if he's finally come to terms with things. A sudden, bloody vision flashes before the father's eyes, stopping him in his tracks. The boy calls out to his father, who senses something is wrong, and declares they must return immediately. Back in the office, the blonde man stands over the collapsed and bleeding maid, a knife nearby, as the baby watches in horror. The baby is stunned, questioning why this happened, while the man coldly calls the maid a foolish woman. The blonde man looks down at the scene, his expression completely unfazed. The dying maid desperately reaches for his shoe, trying to speak of her lady. As she clutches his leg, he snarls down at her with pure disgust. He viciously kicks the maid away from him. The baby watches the brutal attack, horrified and begging him to stop. Overwhelmed by terror, she lets out a piercing cry. A massive blast of blue energy erupts from the baby, sending the blonde man flying. A tiny hand reaches out from the basket, the source of the incredible power. The injured maid manages to catch the baby's falling basket, protecting her. Arriving on the scene, the red-haired man sees a pillar of light and reacts with intrigue. Bathed in the glow, the pink-haired boy asks what the light is, but his father says he knew this would happen. In the chaotic aftermath, the maid holds the basket while the blonde man lies defeated, and the baby looks around, stunned. The baby's eyes widen in terror at the sight of so much blood. The red-haired man orders his son, Julius, to take Elizabeth. Julius quickly scoops up his baby sister while his father, Michael, kneels to check on the maid, his face grim. With the attacker slumped against a wall, Michael asks if it was poison, while Julius speculates it was suicidia theory Michael finds highly plausible. Julius holds his sister close, softly calling her name, Elizabeth. His father, Michael, then gently takes the baby from him. The terrified baby starts hiccuping, her eyes filling with tears. Overwhelmed, her tears begin to stream down her face. She finally lets out an earth-shattering wail in her father's arms. W-A-A-A-A-A-H-H-H-H-H. Julius looks on, bewildered by the chaos and his sister's distress. He recalls the moment, admitting he didn't understand what was happening. In his memory, all he knew was fear, as he watched attendants rush to another collapsed person. He remembers how his baby sister cried, burying her face in their father's uniform. Michael holds his daughter, his expression serious, while she eventually falls asleep from exhaustion. Julius tells his father that the sensation was the same as at the mansion, explaining that Elizabeth just cried. Holding the basket, Julius adds that it's the first time he's ever seen her cry that hard. Michael concludes that she must have been terrified, just as a knight rushes in to report that Lady Adelina is safe. As attendants confirm the collapsed woman's bleeding has stopped, Michael calmly acknowledges the report. A gloved hand reveals a small, glowing pink flower, the only item the attacker was carrying. Michael's expression hardens with suspicion, his mind clearly racing with the implications of this discovery. He clenches his fist, deciding to keep the flower as evidence, while an attendant calls out to a man named Roger. Julius, still holding his baby sister in her basket, calls out to his father to get his attention. Michael turns to his son and issues a direct order: increase the number of guards protecting Adelina. Julius beams with relief, glad that his mother will be safe so he can return to his studies without worry. But Michael's voice turns cold and menacing as he begins to deliver a chilling warning. He declares that anyone who makes an enemy of him or the Waltzer family will live to regret it. The baby stirs, rubbing her eyes as she wakes up, the recent chaos now just a blur. She realizes her mother's appointment ceremony has concluded, with her father holding her proudly. Her mother, Adelina, stands before the crowd in an elegant gown, smiling as if nothing ever happened. Her father's voice gently asks if she's awake, prompting Julius to look over with concern. He softly tells his fussing daughter to calm down, and she immediately settles in his arms. He pulls her into a warm embrace, and she looks up at her father, feeling completely safe. From the crowd's perspective, the family presents a perfect, united front to the public. But whispers spread about the battlefield demon doting on a baby, and his dark aura makes the crowd shriek in terror. Eek. Adelina looks overwhelmed by the attention, telling herself that now is not the time to be afraid. Even the baby seems to sense the tension, nervously peeking out from the safety of her father's hold. Meanwhile, the heroic maid who saved the baby finally awakens in a luxurious bed. She sits up, disoriented, taking in her opulent surroundings with confusion. Two attendants stand by her bed, one asking if she's awake, while the other seems surprised she's even alive. Suddenly, she bolts upright in a panic, screaming for someone to help her lady before collapsing in pain. GHK. One of the men catches her, quickly reassuring her that the commander's daughter is safe. Overcome with emotion, the maid bursts into tears, relieved to know her sacrifice wasn't in vain. The attendants watch over the resting hero, ensuring she fully recovers from her ordeal. Later, an aide reports that they found no other clues in the palace, prompting Michael to question the attacker's motive. After hearing the report, Michael commends his aide for a job well done. The baby smiles, understanding that the maid's testimony was a complete lie. She sits there looking perfectly innocent, the mastermind behind the recent events. Michael holds his daughter, deciding he needs to review the magical contracts on all servants, while the baby is glad the maid is alive. Julius approaches his father, asking what became of the intruder who attacked them. The baby snuggles contently, thinking everything worked out for the best, or so she believed. But the peace is shattered when Adelina appears, furiously demanding to know why they brought the baby here. Julius pleads with his mother to calm down, but she's beyond reason, leaving the baby stunned by her rage. The baby burrows into her brother's arms as he stares in disbelief at his mother, who apparently despises his sister. She recalls the tender moments with her father and brother, a loving family she desperately wants to protect. But her mother's cold, resentful glare cuts through the warm memories like a shard of ice. As the family faces off, a ghostly voice seems to confess responsibility for the discord, saying, "It was me." Suddenly, a regal blonde woman appears, Queen Claudia, as a horrifying vision of a guillotine flashes before the baby's eyes. The baby is frozen in terror, the vision of the queen replaying in her mind as her father tries to feed her. She looks at the queen, who hasn't changed at all from the vision, and a chilling realization dawns on her. The baby steals her resolve, reminding herself that she is Elizabeth now, not her past self, Liz. The blonde woman, addressing Adelina as the first queen, asks if she's ready for the evening ball. She explains that she heard about the quote, incident and felt compelled to rush over immediately. The family stands together, a silent and tense audience for the visiting royal. The queen continues, stating she heard a servant attempted to kidnap the commander's daughter. The queen then throws some serious shade, telling Adelina she shouldn't have troubled herself, despite being in charge of the guest rooms. She hides a sly smile behind her fan, her eyes betraying a hint of malice. As she smiles, the baby senses a familiar and deeply unsettling presence emanating from her. In a somber vision, the red-haired man holds his baby daughter as a woman with light hair bows before them. But the baby senses something off, getting a weird vibe from the first queen. With a sigh, the blue-haired woman tells the red-haired man that her only concern is whether the Waltzer heir lives or dies. The baby peeks out from behind her father's cape, watching her mother and the queen walk away. The family stands together, father, son, and baby daughter, a picture of solemn duty. The blonde queen hides a cunning smile behind her fan, her true intentions concealed. The blue-haired woman and the blonde queen exchange a silent, icy glare, a battle of wills in a single glance. Cradled in her father's arms, the baby wonders if the bad vibe from Queen Claudia has vanished. Queen Claudia now stands beside a handsome man, her expression unreadable. The blue-haired woman declares her trust in the queen, gratefully accepting her words while thinking her own mother may hate her for this. The baby realizes her mother has effectively pushed the first queen away from her. With a determined look, the baby rejects this outcome, thinking a firm no as her mother walks away. The scene shifts to Queen Claudia, who is being attended to by her maids. A maid bows, promising to make the necessary arrangements immediately. As an attendant styles her hair, the queen gives a sharp look to the maid before her. The queen's calculating eyes reflect the image of the commander holding his baby. She issues a cool command to send a message to the head court mage, which her maid dutifully accepts. With a sinister smile, she thinks about meeting the special gift she has prepared. Sometime later, the baby lies peacefully on an ornate blue rug in her room. She wiggles and squirms, practicing her new skill of rolling over. Success! She easily flips over, celebrating her newfound mobility and reaching for a new challenge. She proudly holds her bottle, all by herself, thrilled with how fast she's growing up without using magic. While drinking, she reflects on her visions, concluding they must have been glimpses of the future. A maid gently pushes the baby in a luxurious carriage through a sunlit garden. The maid expresses her relief that the baby is safe, while the baby coos, agreeing that's right. In a flashback, her father explains to a shocked group that he made a special exception, permitting healing magic to be used on the maid. The baby recalls how the maid was honored for her bravery, though she's still puzzling over the incident herself. The dedicated maid smiles warmly, her kindness shining through. The baby's eyes widen with a sudden, bright realization. She celebrates the success of her Operation Get Along with Dad mission. Her happy moment is interrupted as she sees her brother Julius and the maid, looking puzzled. Julius and the maid enter his father's study, announcing that he was summoned. His father looks up from his desk, pausing from stamping a document with a serious expression. Julius listens intently as his father informs him that his swordsmanship training will resume the next day. Julius agrees to return to the academy, but his determined smile falters as he glances back at his baby sister, his eyes filling with sadness. His father tries to reassure him, stating that Adelina must have her own reasons for her behavior. With a heavy heart, Julius forces himself to agree, saying that he understands. His mood instantly lifts as he gazes at his smiling baby sister, his own face softening with affection. Watching his son leave with the baby, Michael reflects that while Adelina overcame this issue with Julius, things are different now. Michael is lost in thought, remembering Adelina's struggles, a rainy day where he warned someone named Nausea to stay away, and his own resulting sorrow. As Julius and the maid depart, Michael continues writing at his desk, the weight of his family on his shoulders. An older gentleman with glasses enters the study to announce a messenger from the royal palace. The baby's eyes light up with intense curiosity at the news. Holding his sister, Julius wonders aloud if they've discovered something about the attack on their mother. The baby thinks to herself that she's also very curious about the news. Julius shoots her a firm look, telling her to quiet down for now. A menacing, dark figure with sharp green eyes suddenly appears in the baby's mind, causing her to freeze in terror. Julius asks to be excused, and as he turns to leave, the baby lets out a tiny "bah." Michael meets with the messenger, ready to hear the report from the palace. Later, Julius stands watch over his sister as she sleeps soundly in her cradle. A blue-haired maid makes a magical entrance, floating down from the ceiling as a shocked Julius looks on from below. Julius admits he wanted to overhear his father's conversation, but the maid questions if it was just about the recent incident. With an intense gaze, the maid cryptically asks him, "Can't you foresee it?" In her thoughts, she reveals a critical limitation. The only future she knows is from the memories of her past life as Liz the commoner. She assures Julius she isn't blaming him, but reminds him that, in the end, results are all that matter. Her words hit home, and Julius grips the railing, looking down into the moonlit garden with a heavy heart. While watching over a sleeping Elizabeth, Julius resolves to step up his sword practice, which surprises the maid. She'd always assumed he was perfect, but Julius confesses that swordsmanship is the one class he can't pass at the academy. His eyes burn with determination as he vows to get stronger to protect everyone he cares about. Seeing her chance, the maid makes a bold request, asking Julius to take her to the academy with him. Bathed in a soft glow, she thinks to herself that she too wants to protect her family. A determined smile spreads across her face as she commits to her new path. Julius's expression turns serious as he drops a bombshell question. What happened to the real Elizabeth? The maid stands before him, her face a mask of composure, offering no answer. Seeing her silent pain, Julius gives a sad smile and decides to let it go, resolving not to ask again. A quiet moment of understanding passes between them as she watches him with a somber expression. A grand, ornate carriage stands ready, signaling the start of a new journey. Inside, the Duke sits with a tiny Elizabeth in a basket, while Julius sits opposite, the mood tense and silent. Julius explains to his baby sister that he was hesitant about this trip to the academy, but their father insisted. The Duke chimes in, explaining he didn't want Elizabeth to get lonely with both of them gone. It's a surprisingly tender moment as Julius holds his sister, both looking toward their resolute father. Overcome by her cuteness, the Duke is struck by Cupid's arrow. It's official. He's a total sucker for his daughter. They arrive at the prestigious El-Toad Royal Academy, a sprawling sanctuary for the nation's elite. The Duke explains his strategy. With the knights reassigned to the palace, the academy is now the safest place for them. He declares with confidence that they will all be staying at the academy to ensure Elizabeth's safety. A flicker of a smile plays on his lips, content with his decision as a new day dawns. As they travel, Elizabeth dozes peacefully in her basket, under her father's watchful eye. Julius diligently studies a childcare book, learning that it's good for babies to get plenty of exercise. His father smirks, suggesting they start with sword practice, an idea that fills the baby with pure horror. Julius immediately shoots down the idea as being way too soon, much to Elizabeth's silent, profound relief. Then Julius suggests skin-to-skin training with the estate's muscle-bound knights, causing Elizabeth to mentally scream in protest as the carriage speeds on. As they arrive, the Chancellor greets the Duke, who is holding Elizabeth and his son. An intense, dark purple aura suddenly crackles around the Duke and Elizabeth as the Chancellor's gaze falls upon them. Completely unaware of the dark energy filling the air, Julius just beams a happy, innocent smile. Julius is left holding his sister as he watches his parents walk into the academy for what looks like a serious meeting. Now in charge, Julius carries his sister in her basket down a long, sun-drenched corridor. The blue-haired maid makes another spectacular entrance, floating down in a beautiful new dress, once again startling Julius. Still holding Elizabeth, Julius marvels at her ability to magically change her entire outfit on the fly. With a playful wink, she explains her clothes are made of magic, a convenience that clearly impresses him. The maid takes the basket, and the three of them proceed together down the hall, a newly formed team. She leads them into the Academy's massive library, a collection of knowledge so vast it's said to rival the royal palace itself. Walking past endless shelves of books, even the maid can't help but be impressed by the sheer scale of it all. She gets straight to work, her hand glowing with magic as she scans the titles and zeroes in on a single, important-looking book. A flashback shows a younger version of herself sitting sadly among piles of books, while a man waves kindly from a nearby window. The memory continues, showing the same man telling a young, pink-haired Julius that it's time to go. As Julius agrees, the man from the window returns, announcing his arrival to the young girl, who looks up from her reading. The memory takes a dark turn, showing her as a little girl, crying on the floor with a scraped forehead, clutching a book for comfort. Back in the present, the maid stands tall in the library, her resolve strengthened by the memories of her past struggles. Julius senses something is off and asks if she's okay, but she quickly dismisses his concern. To cover her tracks, she holds up the book she found, suggesting they donate it to an orphanage if it's no longer needed. As a man walks up the stairs, a red-haired boy named Julius hesitates, asking a blue-haired woman if they should head to the training grounds. She turns to him as he walks away, asking if he hates swordsmanship. Julius explains that he dislikes the instructor's methods, revealing the man assaults students with low magic power and calls it special training. He continues, his voice strained, explaining that when he tried to intervene, the instructor turned on him next. Suddenly, a smirking man appears, greeting Julius Waltzer with a chilling familiarity. The instructor's condescending smile fills the frame as he repeats his greeting, leaving Julius and the blue-haired woman on edge. With a menacing grin, the instructor looms over them, his eyes fixed on Julius Waltzer. The blue-haired woman is struck by a sudden realization this man's aura is just as awful as the legendary macabre crystal of Leicester. A tense silence falls over the grand hall as Julius and the woman face the smirking instructor. The instructor raises an eyebrow, mockingly asking if the young master plans on joining today's training. He clasps his hands together with sadistic glee, exclaiming that this is gonna be fun. As the blue-haired woman watches with concern, the instructor taps his polished shoe, noting that the young master's skills haven't improved. Leaning in close, the instructor wears a disturbingly cheerful grin, telling Julius he's always praying for him. His true prayer is a curse, that Julius will become a monster, just like his father, and learn to rejoice while bathed in blood. With a final, sinister wave, the instructor bids them farewell, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. The blue-haired woman stares after him, utterly stunned by his audacity. Her shock turns to rage as she realizes he not only mocked her brother, but dared to call their father a monster. This guy is giving her major flashbacks to a jerk from her past life, and she decides it's time to unleash some extra-large magic power. Julius admits his swordsmanship evaluation tanked after he stood up to the man, but he has no regrets. Even though he knows he can't win a fair fight, he vows not to forgive the instructor, remembering how the man also insulted their mother when she became prime minister. Seething with anger, the blue-haired woman clenches her fist, muttering about the useless instructor. Her mind flashes back to a former life, where she dealt with an aristocratic coworker who was obsessed with magic power. She remembers how that incompetent man pushed all his work onto her, but she tells herself she can handle it. Back in the present, Julius is adamant, declaring he won't burden his parents with this problem. With a determined clench of his fist, he simply asks her to watch over him. The scene shifts to the training grounds, where the instructor stands victorious over a field of defeated students. Flanked by other students, the blue-haired woman steps forward, demanding he stop his violent training. In response, Julius steps onto the field alone, drawing his sword with quiet resolve. The instructor scoffs at his bravery, but Julius deflects the blow with a blade wreathed in fire. Their swords clash in a shower of sparks, the instructor's arrogant smirk never wavering. But the instructor's strength is overwhelming, and Julius doubles over in pain from a powerful strike. With a cruel jab, the instructor stabs Julius, mockingly promising not to scar his pretty face. The onlooking students, including the blue-haired woman, gasp in horror at the brutal attack. She's frozen in place, remembering his plea for her not to interfere. Julius lies beaten and dirtied on the ground, seemingly defeated. The blue-haired woman looks on, her heart sinking as she recalls her brother's promise that he wouldn't lose. She desperately wants to believe in him, but her doubt grows, reminding herself she's not even his real family as she reaches for his hand. But Julius isn't done, yet pushes himself up, his body bruised but his spirit unbroken. A fire ignites in his golden eyes as he glares up from the ground. He rises to his feet, a powerful aura radiating from him as he stands tall once more. A memory surfaces of his childhood desire. He wanted to be just like his father. He recalls training tirelessly, pushing himself to gain that same unshakable strength, and yet, a part of him hated every moment of it. The blue-haired woman watches with wide eyes, realizing he finally has a real reason to get stronger. A small, determined smile plays on Julius's lips. No matter what, she's still his little sister. He grips his sword, remembering his promise to achieve unshakable strength, just like his father's. He vows to surpass his old self, and finally sees the power he's been chasing. With newfound determination burning in his eyes, Julius stands ready to face his opponent. His glowing eyes reflect the instructor's sneering face. He's finally found the resolve to fight back. This is it! Julius lunges forward, his sword glowing with power as he brings it down in a decisive strike. A man with a bloody cut on his face looks shocked as a crowd of boys cheers him on. Whoa! The man is enraged, cursing his opponent for scarring his beautiful face while summoning a blast of green magic. A blonde boy gets hit as a red-haired boy, covered in blood, calls the attacker a coward for using magic in a sword fight, while the crowd panics. The furious instructor roars at the students, telling them to be silent because this is a lesson. He prepares another attack, sneering that this is what a monster's child gets for defying a human, but a blue-haired girl shouts for him to stop. The blue-haired girl leaps in front of the injured boy, creating a glowing hexagonal shield to protect him. As the boy stares in shock, the instructor unleashes his final attack, while the girl realizes her magic power won't activate. Her barrier shatters as she panics, unable to summon her magic, leaving them defenseless against the incoming green energy. Suddenly, a massive beam of pink and red light strikes from above. The instructor stands in the resulting dust cloud, smugly declaring that his targets got what they deserved. His victorious laughter cuts short as he looks up in confusion. Huh? Through the clearing smoke, a formidable red-haired man in a tan coat stands protectively over the two children. A powerful force blasts through the courtyard, dispersing the remaining green magic. The dust and magical energy settle after the devastating counterattack. The injured boy looks up in relief, while the instructor stares in disbelief and terror. The red-haired man turns his back, his coat billowing as he begins to walk away. He pauses for a moment, his expression stern and lost in thought. The instructor recognizes him as Duke Waltzer, questioning his presence, while the Duke demands to know what the commotion is. Trying to save his skin, the The instructor claims it's just a normal swordsmanship practice. The Duke's eyes glow with terrifying power as the instructor nervously justifies his actions as proper education, a claim the Duke questions. The instructor eagerly agrees, but his words are cut short as the Duke's fist erupts in golden flames. With a ferocious punch, the Duke sends the instructor flying across the courtyard. Gah! He stands over his defeated opponent, his fist still crackling with purple energy, asserting his dominance. Elsewhere, the baby Elizabeth sighs in relief, thinking that was a close one. She cleverly thinks that since she turned back into a baby inside the dust cloud, her father couldn't have noticed her intervention. Back in her crib, she tries to act like an innocent baby, while her father looks down at her with a knowing sigh. Her brother Julius, beaten but resolute, clenches his fist and agrees with something his father said. He admits his anger at his own weakness, and his father listens with a calm expression. Duke Walzer places a gentle hand on Julius's head, telling him to never forget this feeling of powerlessness. He assures his son that this feeling will become his source of strength from now on. Julius looks up at his father and swears to protect his little sister, a promise that makes Elizabeth's heart swell. In the aftermath, the injured students are being treated, and Julius gets his arm bandaged by a woman. The disgraced instructor lies on the ground, groaning in pain, until a sharp boot stomps on his head. The Duke looms over him, an intimidating silhouette against the bright sky. As the instructor vows revenge, the Duke simply orders him to be silent. A sinister smile spreads across the Duke's face as he muses that no one would care if he crushed an annoying insect. The terrified instructor whimpers as the Duke orders the mess to be cleaned up, and two students immediately agree. Julius and Elizabeth watch as the Duke's orders are carried out, the situation now under control. Elizabeth grabs onto her father's shirt, her big eyes watching the scene unfold. A memory flashes of the blue-haired girl, tearfully wondering why her magic failed her when she needed it most. Julius, holding his baby sister, wonders if he was too flustered to focus during the fight, then says her name, Elizabeth. Elizabeth looks up at her brother with a sweet, innocent smile. Julius, now patched up with a bandage, gives a small, determined smile back. As Julius holds Elizabeth, he realizes his emotions are written all over his face, just as a pair of polished shoes steps into view. A new student with tanned skin and dark hair approaches, casting an intense gaze on Julius and Elizabeth. He introduces himself as a student and offers Julius some ointment for his scrapes and bruises. Julius recognizes the student's origin from a grand coastal palace, identifying him as an exchange student. The exchange student's kind demeanor vanishes as he glares, thinking, "You're an eyesore," causing Elizabeth to gasp in shock. But Elizabeth quickly reconsiders, realizing there's more to this than simple animosity. A shocking realization dawns on her. This newcomer is the real brother from the story she knows. A memory reveals a harsh truth. A pink-haired boy was cruel to everyone, seen here throwing a drink in a man's face. Elizabeth hopes that now, as family, her brother will finally show her a kinder side. But a flash of the real brother, older, scarred with a sinister smile, sends a chill down the baby's spine. She realizes the cold Julius from her past life wasn't just a product of his relationship with their father, there was a deeper reason. The bandaged, red-haired boy from the academy fight looks back at her with a questioning smile. Elizabeth lets out a surprised little cry in response. In a cute scenario, she imagines coaching her brother on social skills, correcting his blunt refusal of medicine from a classmate. Next lesson. When a classmate apologizes, don't just dismiss them. You're supposed to thank them. When asked what to say to a sad classmate, his answer is a brutal, "You're an eyesore." She concludes that if there were a team-building exam, her brother would definitely fail. Back in reality, a brown-haired woman watches as a man tends to the baby, both lost in a moment of silence. Gripped by a sudden urgency, Elizabeth knows she has to act fast. She remembers a stuffed animal, a gift from her father, hidden among a mountain of presents while a maid and Julius stood by her crib. Having been in her room for so long, the toy has become perfectly attuned to her magic. A blue-haired maid holds the simple yellow toy, a key part of the plan now taking shape. A grown-up Elizabeth believes this toy, a ripuyo, can stop her brother's verbal assaults at the academy, and recalls the dark-skinned exchange student from a founding family. The maid explains her brilliant plan. By imbuing Aripio with her magic, she can accompany her brother to the academy in secret. Julius seems hesitant about the idea, but the maid's confident smile suggests she knows what she's doing. Julius finally agrees, admitting he swore to protect his sister and needs a way to stay in contact. The maid is deeply moved, blushing that even knowing her secret, he still calls her his sister. Their moment is interrupted as the grand doors swing open, and a voice calls out, "Julius, you're here." Julius turns to face his father, the Duke, and greets him respectfully. The Duke approaches, explaining that he thought he heard voices coming from the room. Playing it cool, Julius claims he was just talking to himself, and his father seems to accept the excuse. The Duke warns Julius about the new exchange student, revealing he's from a powerful merchant family and that the gifts he brought from the royal palace could be dangerous, a fact the baby overhears. Understanding his father's unspoken warning, Julius puts on a dazzling smile and promises to make an effort to befriend the new student. After their conversation, Julius stands alone before the imposing doors, contemplating his father's words. In her crib, Elizabeth sits up, ready to put her own plan into action with her trusty stuffed animal sidekick. A sinister smile crosses Julius's face as he thinks of the exchange student, but Elizabeth, holding her toy, thinks to herself, "Duh, I already know." Julius looks a little bewildered as he's presented with the large, magical-looking stuffed animal. Blushing, he admits to the toy that he needs its advice, and a tiny chibi baby gives a determined, "Aye." The scene shifts to the grand, sunlit campus of the academy. Inside a classroom, the narration introduces Tisua Najul Lars, an exchange student from a kingdom across the sea. As Tisua nervously reviews his papers, it becomes clear he is terrified of Julius, who watches him from the background. Julius, with Aripio on his shoulder, decides his first move is simple. He'll just go speak to him. His grand strategy? Tell the guy to interact with him. Aripio internally screams, "There's no plan at all." As expected, Julius is the center of attention, effortlessly charming his classmates while Aripio sits on his shoulder. Aripio suggests using its cuteness to break the ice, and Julius agrees, having already noticed that Tisua is the one watching him most intensely. They find their target eating lunch all by himself on a bench in the courtyard. Julius approaches, and a startled Tisua looks up, mid-sandwich, at the most popular boy in school. Julius casually asks if he always eats outside, and Tisua shyly explains that he enjoys it. Without another word, Julius plops down right beside him, leaving the poor guy completely flustered. Aripio senses this is the perfect opportunity, and Tisua looks down, mustering his courage to speak. Tisua stammers nervously, trying to thank Julius for something, much to Julius's confusion. He explains that Julius helped him during sword class, but Julius just brushes it off, getting embarrassed by the praise. Suddenly, Aripio wobbles and begins to fall from Julius's shoulder. In a moment of sheer panic, Julius grabs the toy and yells, "Elizabeth," leaving Tisua wondering if he's actually talking to a stuffed animal. Miles away, a maid gently holds the real baby Elizabeth in a lavish room. The baby suddenly convulses in pain as the maid cries out in terror, and a dark voice calls for someone to pillage her. Chaos erupts as servants run for help. The Duke rushes to his daughter's side, finding her feverish in her crib and screaming for a doctor. A sinister green symbol reflects in an unknown eye as the Duke stares at his daughter, realizing with dread that something is terribly wrong with her mana. Julius bursts onto the scene in a panic, desperately calling out for his sister Elizabeth. A maid quickly shushes him, explaining that the doctor said the young lady needs to rest. Leaning over the crib, Julius gives his baby sister a serious, knowing look. As a dark aura surrounds him, he warns the sleeping baby that they'll have a proper talk later. The next day, he looms over her crib and bluntly asks for an explanation. Elizabeth recalls what happened, remembering she was watching her brother through her toy, Aripio. She remembers hearing a crash and sending her magical clone in the form of the blue-haired maid to check it out, but her clone was met with a blinding flash of magical energy. A powerful beam of light shot down, aimed directly at a crib. The magical backlash slammed into the real Elizabeth, causing her to collapse. A maid found her unconscious and screamed for help. Back in the present, the blue-haired maid clone finishes her report to Julius. Julius calmly repeats their father's official story. It was just a temporary case of unstable mana common in babies. He almost buys it, but then a thought stops him cold. He's talking to an adult clone, not a baby. As the clone begins to glow, he asks if her mana is unstable again, finally catching on. He looks around, now seeing the volatile magical energy filling the entire room. He turns to see the real baby in the crib, and the truth hits him. He immediately forbids her from ever using clone magic again. Elizabeth protests with a loud cry, but Julius stands firm. He tells her that creating a clone is an abnormal and dangerous power that she should have never used in the first place. Denied her best trick, Elizabeth defiantly squeezes her yellow toy, Aripio. She holds up the toy to her brother, offering him a new way to keep an eye on him. The scene shifts to the Grand Academy, where students are gathered. Julius now walks the halls with Aripio on his shoulder, as his sister's voice warns him not to overdo it. He takes a breath and enters the classroom, ready for the day. As Tisua nervously stands by, Elizabeth has to coach her brother through Aripio to just say hello. Julius lets out a tired, barely audible good morning. Socializing is exhausting. He walks past his classmates to find his seat for the day. Aripio whispers that he's grown up, making Julius blush and tell his sister to shut it. The teacher begins the day's lesson, pointing out locations on a world map. The exchange student, Tisua, diligently takes notes while Julius watches him from the back of the room. Later, outside, Julius approaches Tisua to apologize for cutting their previous conversation short. Tisua becomes a blushing, sweaty mess, insisting it was no problem at all. Tisua brings up a book on medicinal plants, noting that he heard Julius is skilled in healing magic. Julius plays it cool, but Elizabeth, via Aripio, tells him to at least try to be friendly. Tisua explains his dream of combining healing magic with medicinal plants to help more people. Meanwhile, back at the manor, the Duke instructs someone to continue monitoring his daughter's condition. The doctor claims it's just common mana instability, but the Duke presses him, asking if there could be any other causes. The doctor gives a vague but serious warning to be careful, as it could be an extremely rare case. The Duke gently touches his sleeping daughter's hair, telling her not to push herself so hard. In a flash of memory, he recalls promising that she would become the light of the Waltzer family. But even as she sleeps, a dark, sinister energy crackles ominously around her. At the academy, Julius's thoughts turn back to his sister, Elizabeth. He stands alone in a grand hall, his expression filled with concern. Back at home, Elizabeth, now dressed up, holds Aripio and focuses on her new mission, the exchange student. She cheers for her brother's social success, and he watches from the doorway with a fond smile. He shyly admits that their father has given him permission to rely on her, officially approving her as his sidekick. Puffed up with pride, Elizabeth is ready for her new responsibilities. Julius has to quickly remind her that the clone ban is still very much in effect. He tells her that since their father is away at the royal palace, they have some freedom. Elizabeth suggests visiting their mother's place, making Julius worry that she, like her tiny chibi version, might collapse from overwork. While Julius excitedly plans his strategy meeting for Tisua with his baby sister, a maid smiles fondly, thinking how well they get along. The scene shifts to a majestic castle, the domain of the Chancellor. A blue-haired woman at her desk is informed that Duke Waltzer has arrived. The Duke cuts an imposing figure in his striking red and gold military uniform. The blue-haired woman thanks the Duke, explaining that the special tea leaves he provided have helped her feel better. The Duke remarks that he heard the tea was good for one's health, and she agrees, saying it makes her feel lighter. She sighs that unlike him, she gets tired easily, but he gently chastises her for simply working too much. The Chancellor changes the subject, mentioning she heard Julius made a friend, an exchange student skilled in healing magic. The Duke smirks, realizing word gets around fast. She explains that she was unexpectedly thanked by the student's family during diplomatic talks, and in the surprise, she forgot to properly thank the Duke for the precious tea. The Duke advises her to share such important news with him sooner next time, and she promises to try. He confidently states that this new friendship should help silence the nobles who oppose an alliance with the Bien Kingdom. The Duke notes that while most of their nobles are reasonable, there's a greedy faction that would gladly profit from war. The Duke assures the Chancellor that Elizabeth has fully recovered, and she agrees that no more reports are necessary. After declaring he has business with the Knight's Order, the Duke departs, leaving the Chancellor to her work and her tea. The scene transitions to a bright, sunlit gazebo where Julius is having tea with Tisua. Tisua sits nervously before a table piled high with delicious-looking pastries and sandwiches. Julius formally introduces his little sister Elizabeth, who sits happily in her ornate carriage, clutching her yellow toy. Wah! The baby suddenly reaches out towards a startled Tisua, babbling a friendly greeting. Completely smitten, Tisua blushes at how adorable she is. He takes a sip of tea and recognizes the flavor, and Julius confirms it's from Tisua's home country. Tisua smiles, enjoying the familiar taste of home. He takes another sip, his bright blue eyes shining with quiet contentment. From her carriage, baby Elizabeth watches them intently. Julius explains that his father originally gave the tea leaves to his mother. He adds that since his mother was overworked, he thought the tea would be a great help. Tisua gets flustered, insisting it's no big deal since the research wasn't his to begin with, as Elizabeth continues to observe. Suddenly, Elizabeth's eyes widen in horror as she has a vision of a strange, glowing potion bottle. Crash! The peaceful afternoon is shattered as a pouch tumbles from the shaking table. Julius cries out his sister's name as she suddenly looks feverish, a strange energy crackling around her ear. Tisua looks on in absolute terror, recognizing the symptoms. "What's wrong?" Julius asks frantically, but Tisua can only explain that it's an illness that gradually drains a person's mana. Panicking, Julius demands to know what happens when the illness fully manifests. The garden party is over as Tisua stands grimly, the mood now heavy with dread. In her delirium, Elizabeth thinks to herself that there are no exceptions. Ugh. She groans, her face scrunched in pain as she begins to sweat. Julius springs into action, shouting at a maid to call a doctor at once and inform his father in the royal palace. Elizabeth's tiny body convulses as she struggles against the mysterious ailment. Later, Julius watches over his sleeping sister, who now rests with a cool compress on her forehead. Tisua explains the basics of their world's magic. Humans can convert magic into life force, allowing powerful mages to stave off exhaustion, but he reveals the horrifying alternative, a rare illness called Nagria disease, where the body consumes life force to compensate for a lack of mana. The only known case was in an adult woman, making Elizabeth's situation unprecedented. The terrifying implications sink in, and Julius stares in horror, wondering what will happen to his sister. With urgent purpose, the Duke gallops his horse at full speed across the stone courtyard. He arrives at the grand estate, greeted by a subordinate on the steps. Dismounting, the first words out of his mouth are a desperate demand. "How is Elizabeth?" Without waiting for an answer, he pulls on his gloves, his expression a mask of grim determination. A maid hurries to keep up, informing him that the doctor is currently examining his daughter as they rush down the hall. "It's fine," the Duke says, his voice tight with worry, clearly having no intention of waiting. A maid knocks firmly on the door to Elizabeth's room, announcing her immediate entry. Inside, Julius and Tisua watch as a doctor tends to the baby in her crib. The Duke bursts in, his eyes fixed on the doctor as he demands to know his daughter's condition. The doctor looks up from the peacefully sleeping baby, praising Julius's quick thinking in using a magic recovery potion. The Duke praises Julius for his quick actions, but the boy, looking shocked and overwhelmed, can only mutter, "No." His father stands over Elizabeth's crib, a silent and imposing figure radiating grim determination. The doctor looks on nervously, a bead of sweat betraying his professional composure. As Tisua explains that her illness was caused by magic depletion, the Duke's eyes flash with the terrible realization it's Nagria disease. A close-up reveals the unwavering resolve in the Duke's eyes as he accepts the grim diagnosis. He quietly listens as the doctor explains that while the magic potion saved her for now, it's too dangerous to use repeatedly on an infant. The Duke gives a stern order. This matter must not be spoken of to anyone. After dismissing the doctor, the Duke turns his intense gaze on Tisua, demanding a full explanation, and the terrified boy has no choice but to agree. Hidden behind a curtain, a tiny, flustered Tisua stammers out his thanks. The scene fades, leaving a moment of quiet tension. In a flashback, a healthy baby Elizabeth sleeps peacefully in her cradle. The memory focuses on her innocent, sleeping face, a picture of perfect health. Suddenly, a vision intrudes a wave of dizziness and nausea, followed by a faint groan. The vision reveals a woman, Tisua's mother, buried under mountains of paperwork, her mind numb from the endless routine. She feels the crushing pressure to finish her work before the nobles pile on even more, all while wishing she had someone to rely on. A harsh memory surfaces of a man shouting at her to stop slacking off. Another memory follows, smirking nobles sneering that commoners should just obey. But her hand slams down on the desk in defiance. She steels herself, determined not to lose to such arrogant people. Driven by sheer will, she continues to work tirelessly. But the exhaustion is too much, and she collapses, papers scattering around her like fallen leaves. Overwhelmed by despair, she whispers, "No," as darkness consumes her. In her final moments of consciousness, she reaches out a desperate hand for help that will never arrive. The vision ends, and back in the present, baby Elizabeth's eyes flutter open. Her father is there, gently cradling her face and reassuring her that everything is all right now. His eyes filled with love and unwavering resolve, the Duke makes a solemn vow to save his daughter no matter the cost. The scene shifts to a meeting with the Chancellor, Tisua's mother, over a lavish spread of pastries. Julius gets straight to the point, asking if her family is researching Nagria disease, but Tisua quickly denies it. Julius sincerely thanks Tisua, admitting that Elizabeth was only saved thanks to his knowledge. The Duke watches them with a subtle, knowing smirk. Julius smiles, relieved to have found an ally in his desperate search for a cure. He admits to Tisua how shocked he was that the exchange student knew a way to suppress the magic depletion. Tisua explains that a magic stone can only slow the process, not stop it entirely. Julius notes that it was a miracle they found a compatible stone for his sister in the first place. Turning to his father, Julius asks if the family possesses any magic stones that could help. The Duke simply orders someone to bring him that. An assistant places a large, ancient-looking wooden box on the table before them. As the lid is lifted, both Julius and Tisua stare inside, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. Stunned, Julius asks his father where in the world he obtained such a treasure, while Tisua looks like he's about to faint. The Duke calmly explains that he was granted a small piece of the legendary magic crystal by the king himself. Later, a brilliant, glowing pink crystal is placed beside the sleeping baby. A powerful, soothing energy flows from the crystal, blanketing Elizabeth in a gentle, healing light. In a mesmerizing display, the baby's peaceful reflection appears within the facets of the glowing crystal. Meanwhile, the Chancellor continues her research, noting how few reported cases of the disease exist. Under the crystal's care, Elizabeth sleeps on, her condition finally stable. Ah! Her eyes suddenly snap open with a gasp. The crisis has passed, and she now lies in her crib, looking bright-eyed and completely healthy. Her father enters the room, his expression softening with immense relief. The Duke watches his daughter as she babbles happily, letting him know without words that she's doing just fine. Waking up, a happy baby Elizabeth coos and holds onto her father's finger, recognizing him. A maid nervously asks her superiors if it's safe to leave the priceless magic stone in the room. The Duke gives a firm order. If the symptoms reappear, the stone must touch Elizabeth's skin directly. As the maid acknowledges the order, Elizabeth lies happily by the crystal, already thinking of all the questions she has for her big brother. Gazing down at his daughter, the Duke laments that there are no specialists in the entire country who can treat this disease. Despite the grim reality, the Duke stands strong, while a blissful Elizabeth looks up at him, completely unaware of the danger she's in. Suddenly, a blue-haired woman storms past a frantic maid who tries to stop her from entering the master's room without permission. Silence, the woman commands, her authority absolute as a servant practically dives out of her way. With fierce determination, she declares her right to be there, stating that she, too, is a member of the Waltzer family. The Duke watches grimly as the woman approaches Elizabeth's crib, a dark and heavy atmosphere falling over the room. Her golden eyes flash with an intense power, and as she glares, a sleeping Elizabeth begins to stir restlessly. A powerful purple aura erupts around the woman as she stares down at the child, her eyes wide with a mixture of horror and sheer power. The Duke quickly steps in, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder as she trembles. With the situation seemingly under control, the Duke leads the woman and their attendants out of the room. Now alone, baby Elizabeth settles back into a peaceful sleep in her quiet nursery. But in her dreams, she shivers, remembering the terrifying power she just witnessed. In another opulent room, the Duke stands with the distraught blue-haired woman, the Chancellor. Overcome with grief, the Chancellor cries that she doesn't care what happens to her own life. The Duke holds her gently, urging her to calm down before she suffers another one of her attacks. His expression hardens as he reminds her of her duty. As Prime Minister, she must ensure an upcoming meeting is a success. She looks away, whispering that, while she understands her duty, her heart simply cannot accept this cruel reality. As Elizabeth sleeps, the Chancellor's thoughts drift to the sheer rarity of the dreaded Negria disease. Tears stream down her face as she finishes the thought, in utter despair, to think their own daughter would suffer from it too.